Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Marketing for the Rest of Us. I cannot wait to deal with this topic today. It's one of my very favorites because it's actually a question that comes up a lot. How important is design? Right? Like a lot of the people that I work with on a regular basis would label themselves as web designers. And I used to label myself as a web designer for a long time as well. So I totally get that, and in some contexts, I still do identify that way because it's the most, easily understandable by some people. And so but when you're a web designer, right, that sort of brings along the connotation with it that design, the way stuff looks, has a pretty high degree of importance. And so a lot of times I get some version of the question, how important is design? And that's the question I think that we should answer here today. And the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna look at three things that design does and does very well, and that we should really pay attention to whenever we are creating online assets or print assets or whatever. But then we're also gonna look at one very important thing that design does not do that can make all the difference in your business. So let's talk about this and see if we can land on something valuable for you here. If you take even just one thing away from this that will help your business grow, I think it will have been worth your time listening to it. And hopefully, this will ease some of your mind and some of the stress you have around the design of your brand or your products or even your services. Okay. So how important is design? Well, design does three things very, very well. Okay. First of all, design captures attention. All right. Design captures attention. We live in a very attention um, saturated world. What I mean by that is everybody wants attention. And so everybody is striving to get it. That means it's harder than ever today to get attention. I think about YouTube as I learn and as I study different people who have an opinion, informed opinions, but opinions nonetheless on how to grow or how to do things well on YouTube. One of the things that I learned very early on is the importance of the thumbnail. Now, the thumbnail is the little tiny, picture that you see that's associated with any particular video when you're looking at it in the feed. And I say tiny because I'm thinking here mostly of people using YouTube on mobile, but when you're on desktop as well, it's really not that much bigger anyway, something like this. And so you're going to have a hard time if you don't have a very compelling thumbnail, something that is engaging for people to want to click on, then you're gonna have a much lower chance of your video being clicked on and therefore being watched, okay? Now, this applies, of course, to much more than YouTube. It applies to Facebook ads. Okay, when you're scrolling through Facebook, right? You're looking at Aunt Sally's cat, or you're looking at Uncle Jimmy's mac and cheese, or whatever it is. You know, you're not on there looking to be sold to, right? Or looking to be engaged by a company who wants you to do business with them, or an individual who wants you to watch their thing that isn't the thing that you intended to get on there and watch. And so as they're scrolling through their feed, especially if you're paying for advertising, you have the opportunity to interrupt their scroll. And you have just a tiny fraction of a second to actually get their attention. So it has to very quickly grab. Okay, when somebody comes to your website, they say that you have between 1 and 3 seconds to make a solid first impression, and if you don't do that, then they're gone. So design, and this could be typography, right? Text design, also graphic and visual design. These things work together. Design captures attention. It's very good at doing that. And so if you're going to focus on anything in your design, this is the one thing that I would think of first in order to get something out there that you because I'm also an advocate that things are not going to be perfect, right? You need to start. As Sean Cannell says, who's a YouTube influencer, very influential in that space. He says you got to just press record, and I totally agree. Um, it's not going to be perfect. You have to get something out there that you can iterate on. Remember, right? I go back to what I said just last week on the podcast. 3 principles of evidence-based marketing. Thou shalt deploy, thou shalt measure, and thou shalt iterate. Okay. Point is, thou shalt deploy. You got to get something out there. That's the most important thing. And so if you're going to focus on anything in your design, that first thing should really be whether or not it captures attention. All right. The second thing that design is really good at doing is giving credibility. Now, unfortunately, design is very subjective. So you're going to have one person who looks at a particular design and loves it and thinks it's great, perfect, wouldn't change anything. Now, if you had 9 other people, right? So 10 total. If you had 9 other people look at that same design, they are each going to come at it with a unique perspective, preferentially and subjectively, on what should be changed. Okay. What I think could be said though is that I almost think there is something objective to be said about whether a design is good or bad, right? It's either pretty or it's ugly, that sort of thing. I think that if you took those 9 people or those 10 people total, even though they each had different little opinions on it, I have a feeling that if you were to ask all of them whether in general, even if it's not perfect to you or whatever, in general, is this pretty or is this ugly? You'd probably have a large majority saying the same thing. That's just sort of the sense that I get for it. Okay. So it gives credibility in the sense that when you have good design and not necessarily ugly design, it tends to lend credibility to your enterprise. It looks like you have high production value. It looks like you have attention to detail. You're concerned about quality control. So the better your design is, the better it will be from that perspective of credibility. Now, your audience matters too. Okay. Some people are going to care about this. Some audiences of people are going to care more about this than other audiences of people. So you got to know your crowd, know your audience. Is your audience the kind that are typically concerned by the way things look? Do they think that that gives credibility to it? Or could you get by with something that is a little bit less polished? I think in the vast majority of cases, you can get away with things that are a little bit less polished. And I actually know some marketers who have intentionally tested objectively ugly designs versus objectively pretty designs. And from a marketing standpoint, the objectively ugly designs did better. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. A lot of the times when you see really direct response focused websites and marketing funnels and things like that, a lot of times you'll see design that isn't really the best. Believe it or not, because they're so hyper focused on testing and things, you'll find out a lot of times that that's intentional, right? It's not always that the best design wins. And so it's always good to test. I mean, to be really practical about it from that marketing A/B testing standpoint, if you were to start with a test of a landing page, you could start with a really ugly one and a really pretty one and see which one converts better and then iterate on that. So that may be a thing to try. Either way though, design gives credibility. Different audiences are going to look at different kinds of design and make that judgment, but design itself does help to give credibility. Okay. All right. The third thing that does make design important is that design is sticky. Design is sticky. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, this is kind of like, there's a couple things really that this could mean. What I'm really trying to get at here is this idea that design and brand are something that people identify with and will stick with for a long time. Okay. So for example, how many people pay more and buy out the wazoo for shirts that have the North Face on it or or Nike or something like that, right? Those marks, those designs draw people in, especially if the company has done a good job at creating philosophical belief around that design to where that somebody feels like they're identifying with the philosophical beliefs of that company. That goes a long way. A practical example of this is the little Apple logo on the outside of a Mac shell. I mean, who of a Mac lover doesn't love that? I mean, most Mac lovers that I know wish that the thing still lit up. And let's just be honest. Part of that is because in an airport, people saw your light up Apple, and that was a cool thing, right? Like you were identifying with Apple as a company, say, hey, here's a set of beliefs and values that I hold dear. And so I want you to know that. Okay. So that bit of design is sticky. It draws people in. You know, personally, I would say that in general, the design of Apple products is one of the reason why I'm a huge fan of Apple products. The design and everything, the attention to detail, it makes me feel great. So it's sticky. It has that lasting power. And when someone identifies, it's like anything. There are people who like their design and their brand is so iconic that like you immediately know when you see something online in that split second in a YouTube thumbnail or whatever, you immediately know whose it is. Okay. And if it's somebody who you're already interested in, then that stickiness is enough to capture their attention and bring them in to it and draw their attention to it. So design captures attention, it gives credibility, and it is sticky. It has lasting power. It has that recognizability factor that is very important. If you're getting value out of this, I would certainly appreciate it if you'd give us a review on your favorite podcast player. If you're watching on YouTube, I do wish you would go ahead and like the video, comment on the video. We're a little behind on getting these out to YouTube though, so maybe a little bit before this episode's out on YouTube. But definitely interact with us, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to do this podcast for you and bringing you immense value. Okay, here's this last piece of the puzzle. So remember, design captures attention, it gives credibility, and it's sticky. But there's one thing, one very, very, very important thing that design does not do. And that is this: design does not sell. Design does not sell. Design does not sell. Words sell. Okay. Words sell. Design captures attention, gives credibility, and it's sticky, but words sell. You have to be good at words in order to do business online. It's really it's really that simple. Whether you're talking about organic content marketing, whether you're talking about paid advertising, whether you're talking about product descriptions on Amazon or on your website, whether you're talking about webinars that you do, whether you're talking about the homepage of your website that promotes your products and services and brand. The only thing that can make a person ultimately buy are words. Now, don't get me wrong. Again, the stickiness of design is certainly something that's going to help create loyalty for future sales in the mind of some people. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. But remember, let's take Nike, for example, or the North Face, or any of these other big brands like this, where you're basically just buying into the clothing brand. Okay. There's again, a philosophy, an idea behind each of these that was crafted with words that if that was not there, would not matter. Okay? Anybody can draw something on a piece of paper. The question is the person who drew it, or or the thing that it stands for. What do they believe and how do you know it? Okay? That's what makes the difference. Design captures attention, it's sticky, it gives credibility, it's very good at those things, so it is important, but it doesn't sell. And the vast majority of problems that people have, I mean, you could go to Canva, start with a template, and get great design here in 2022. You know what you can't do? Even with the great AI content writers that are out there, there's lots of good tools, but the writing, the creativity, right? The sharing of what you believe, that's that's everything. That is what matters when it comes to selling. Everything outside of that creativity is a commodity. It will always be driving down to the lowest price. That would be the game. Okay. But you can rise above that noise if you have words that are designed to sell. So design is important, but it's nowhere near as important as words. In fact, for many different kinds of products and services, especially when you're using sales funnels, what you really need to do is write the words first. Then the first version of your thing can be nice typographical design with just the words on the page, and then iterate from there. I think that would be a great way of getting started for most people. Okay. So think about that as you go about your marketing activities. Today, as you listen to this, or maybe tomorrow, as you listen to this, think about this. Are you focusing so much more on the design, on the way stuff looks, than you are on being compelling in your words? If so, for your sake, please shift your focus immediately. Start paying attention to the words. Let the design follow. Use the design for those three things: attention, credibility, stickiness. I would actually switch the order a little bit. I would say what's most important is attention, and then design that creates stickiness, and then design that gives credibility, and let the words take care of most of the credibility, and the words do the selling. Okay. All right, you guys take care. Hope you've enjoyed this. Hope you found it valuable. Looking forward to a lot more to come here in 2022. God bless y'all. Take care.